Welcome to Packaging Experts Tell All. This is a show that takes place the third Tuesday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The purpose of our show is to provide stories, examples, and tips that help you buy packaging better. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder. I'm a growth strategist and help B2B tech companies with their marketing. I oversee marketing for Real Sourcing Network. We go by RSN for short. RSM provides an innovative and painless way for companies to buy high-quality print and packaging for less. We help companies design, re-engineer, and source packaging. Our panelists have spent years in the packaging industry as buyers, consultants, and manufacturers. Each show, we pick a different packaging-related topic. Today, we are talking about corrugated packaging. So all of you in the audience, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here for our discussion. So in the comment section, tell us where in the world you are joining us from. So just pop a note to us so we can see where we have people joining us today. To kick off our discussion, I'm going to have each panelist share a favorite corrugated packaging story. So Dana, I'd love to have you start us off today. If you could introduce yourself, share an interesting personal fact, and then a corrugated packaging story from your procurement career.
Sounds good. First of all, thanks, Sarah, for having me as part of the panel. I'm Dana Welder, Director of Purchasing for Birchwood Foods. I've been in packaging procurement for over 20 years. Interesting fact about me is I love sailing. So my family and I chartered a 42-foot catamaran and sailed around the British Virgin Islands. I think I mentioned last time I also love, the thrill-seeking aspect of all that. So my favorite corrugate story is probably when I was a packaging procurement manager and asked to evaluate how the packaging was being used in various channels, retail channels, and kind of how it traveled through the supply chain. So I think until you look at that and until you do some of that evaluation, it's kind of interesting to see. So my team had gone to a high-end grocery store, like a Sunset or Whole Foods. We had gone to a club store like Costco, Sam's, and then a convenience store like a Walgreens, and kind of looking at those three various channels to see how the packaging was being used. And, when you look at like the high-end grocery store, like a Whole Foods, their image is sustainability and seeing how, they utilize the corrugate almost as a shelf-ready packaging. It's all a lot of brown box, they don't do the high-end glossy graphics like you'd see in a club store like Costco. And then you kind of go other end of the spectrum is kind of these. I have a little show and tell, but little like high-end glossy corrugated packaging that would be in a Costco, and those are usually more engineered to not just be a vehicle for the primary pack to get to the store, but it's typically shelf ready. And they also had, it was interesting because they have all the shelving, as the racking in, like the Costco and Sam's. And so their corrugate doesn't need to be necessarily over-engineered. I feel like a lot of times you go into these, we sell the same SKU maybe in different channels, and they engineer for worst case, which might be like 4 pallets high, when certain channels don't need that. They don't go more than 2 high, and that's just getting there on the truck to them. So to me, that was kind of, interesting, was just seeing kind of how they used it. And then, the Walgreens we had, like I just kind of showed, was a litho laminated shelf ready package for planters. And the corrugate was being taken out, the packages were being taken out at the DC, the C-Stores DC. and put into these hard plastic totes that they basically ship to the store in that, and they wheel them down the aisles and stock the shelves. So here we are paying for and engineering this, high litho laminated, package that didn't even get displayed on the shelf. So I think just kind of seeing, how people are using the corrugate. Are they using it just, where it gets to the store, they throw it away and it's basically like garbage to them. They don't, or are they displaying it on the shelf? So I think that was kind of the most interesting thing that I had seen. And then kind of introducing online retailers like Amazon adds, kind of a whole nother component to this.
And Dana, love the show and tell. So I know you have more samples on display for us today. So it's always fun to see packaging in real life. It helps people get a better perspective. So thank you for that. Yeah. Dana, well, thank you so much for being with us today. Super excited to hear your insights.
Thank you.
Mark, if you could introduce yourself, share an interesting personal fact, and then a favorite corrugated packaging story from your career.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you again for assembling a great panel to discuss this very timely topic. Again, Mark Oser, 28 years in the world of corporate procurement, with the last 12 focused on packaging. An interesting fact, let's see, I actually invented the world's first soft serve sorbet would work in a conventional yogurt machine back in 1992 or 93. So that was quite a while ago, but that was a technological marvel at the time of food engineering. Interesting corrugated story. I have many. I thought through this, and I have maybe one that's apropos for today. So many years ago, probably about 10 or 11, I was working on a project with a major CPG. Obviously, I can't share the name or the company, out in California. And they were having problems when we went to look at the boxes. We looked at the pack outline, and they were using a case wrapping machine, right? So it would automatically wrap the case with the corrugated box. And the machine was down when we got there. And literally, they said it's down for about 2 hours every day. And so the engineers were looking at it, and they decided that they were going to make a massive investment in redoing the line and bringing in new case packing machines. So I said, all right. So we started to look at all the different corrugated, and we looked at the boxes that were the flats that were going into the machine. And we had been noticing that the manufacturer had been wrapping them with the straps, and they were way over strapping them. So in so much as the board was literally twisted because they were being overstrapped at the supplier. So literally correcting the strapping process and correcting the board process obviated the need for an entire line pack out change. So something as simple as that if you know where to look, you can find sort of easier solutions as opposed to the complicated solution.
Awesome, Mark. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I know sometimes you have fun show and tell. I don't see any packaging today on the table behind you, though. Oh, you're muted, Mark.
Sorry, it's on my floor now because it's overwhelming my table, and I have it on shelves that I just put in. So if I need to reach for something, I'm sure I could, get it.
All right, awesome. Mark, thanks so much for being here. Next up, we have Brian. He is our corrugated expert. Super excited to have him with us. So Brian, if you could introduce yourself, tell us an interesting personal fact, and then a favorite corrugated packaging story.
Absolutely. Sarah, thank you for having me on. Mark and Cory, nice to see you again. Dana and Tim, happy to virtually meet you both. My name is Brian Gately. I'm a corrugated packaging specialist based in Philadelphia. I represent Buckeye Corrugated Inc. A lot of what I focus on is helping D2C, CPG, and subscription-based brands improve their unboxing experience, and then also offer more sustainable solutions to the market. An interesting personal fact about myself would be, outside of packaging, I was a college goalkeeper in soccer, and on the weekends I like to keep that going in Sunday men's leagues. So that's a tidbit on myself that you may not have known. And then an interesting packaging story based around corrugated that I wanted to share was with a customer of mine. I will share them. Awesome partner, Think Outside Boxes. They do a subscription-based company. It's about getting products and activities for kids to get them outside and engaged. They ended up taking one of the boxes that we sold them, that they shipped their materials into, and giving them a kit and directions to turn that corrugated box into a cookie baking oven. So they lined the box with tin foil. You would put your cookie in the box, set it outside, and the sun would bake the cookies. Now, I can't say how good the cookies tasted, but I know they did bake. So that is my interesting corrugated story for the day. Again, happy to be up here, and thank you for having me.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for being here. Cory, pleasure to have you back again. You were on our sustainable packaging show last month, I should say, as a sustainable packaging expert. And I feel like sustainable packaging happens to just come up in every single packaging conversation that we have, no matter what the topic. So really important part of the conversation. And I have to say, I think you have the best Twitter handle of the day. So check out Cory's Twitter handle, very appropriate for our conversation. So Cory, would love to have you introduce yourself and share a favorite corrugated story.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yes, my name is Cory Connors. I'm a packaging consultant based out of Portland, Oregon with Landsberg Aurora. And my funny story is how I got my nickname at Corrugated. I spent my first 5 years working at Weyerhaeuser making boxes. And those guys thought it was hilarious that my name was Cory and I made Corrugated. So that's where it came from, and it stuck. It's been the same for 24 years. And so now it's my handle on TikTok, where I've given myself the title of CEO of packaging. It's totally meaningless, but I'm here to help with any sustainable packaging questions. And an interesting story, I think, came from my history at Weyerhaeuser when we made a mistake on some corrugated boxes for some beer bottles. And we actually got to go to the plant where they made the bottles. And I got to see firsthand how critical, and I think this is relating to Mark's story, how critical the boxes were to the production. If they were off even an eighth, it was too much. So we had to be perfect. We had to be, and I think I understood then how important it was that we manage every detail and take real care of every customer.
Awesome, Cory, and tell our audience today a little bit more about your TikTok channel, since you post so much content about packaging. Yeah,
so I've got about 900 videos on TikTok. It's at Corrugated. I post a lot of them on Instagram as well, and LinkedIn too. So feel free to check them out. I just launched my sustainable packaging podcast, so I'm really excited about that. So thank you.
Thanks for being here, Cory. So Dana, I want to start the conversation off kind of basic, just so we can get an understanding of what is corrugated packaging. I think sometimes there's confusion. What's cardboard? What's corrugated packaging? And then in your experience, when should somebody be using corrugated packaging versus another type of material?
Okay, so corrugated packaging is, I can't do it, is a paper or fiber-based packaging, which is 100% recycled and sustainable. It's made up through the harvesting of trees as well as recycled, recovering it from fiber and recycling centers. So most people tend to think of the brown box, the typical brown box as your corrugated packaging. But it's not necessarily just that. And I wanted to kind of, I think that, you kind of asked one of the things that I liked least versus the most with packaging as well. And I think corrugated packaging tends to have it's a very mature industry. And it tended to not have a lot of innovation in it, historically. And I think that's all, a lot of that is changing now. And I think that's what's exciting to me. And that's what I really like is, this is such a sustainable and recyclable, it's, 100% recyclable, material. And, it's made from, trees that are sustainable, renewable. So I think most of these are all SFI or FSC certified mills. And, now when you look at kind of where this industry is going, I mean, you have the large paper rolls of linerboard and medium, but, they're using them now for this is kind of looking at more the primary pack and having packages like this that you may see cookies or, kind of what Brian talked about, having cookies or little deli type products in there, to having a more of a primary corrugated package that's, you've got the real small fluting in here. So you've got corrugated's the liner, and then the medium is the squiggly part in the inside. And you can have everything from a flute, to something like an F flute. And having that, allows you to do more of some of these primary packs. And, you're able to, this year has, you're able to get rid of some of the aluminum packaging or the plastic packaging. A lot of them have a liner in the inside, either silicone or a grease resistant coating, or, like this is a PLA. This is 100% recyclable. The PLA is a corn-based film that's compostable. And you can just rip rip the paper off and recycle it. So I think it's interesting how it's becoming more of a primary based packaging, as well as, like things like this, where you can see if I can figure this out here in front of the thing. So this is something you might see at like a Costco or Sam's, and basically you're getting rid of kind of all this fiber in here, and it's you're shipping the product in here, and it's got kind of a folding shelf here that helps kind of with the top load impact. And to me, it's just interesting to kind of see how they've kind of evolutionized this to become more of a display ready and primary pack versus, when I first got into corrugated years ago, it was garbage. They threw it, got to the store and they threw it out. Never did you ever see the shelf. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana. And I think all of us, as we start going back into stores more, we'll start seeing more corrugated packaging as display pieces. It's something that 5 or 10 years ago, we didn't see, but I know, like when I go into a grocery store, it's definitely something that I notice as they're taking it directly from the shipment and being able to put it on the shelf without having to do a lot of extra work. So thank you for that, Dana. Tim, welcome. Glad we were able to work out the camera, so now we can see you. Tim, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us an interesting personal fact, and then if you have a corrugated packaging story that you'd like to share from your career.
I am a little bit of a duck out of water here because I've been involved in flexible packaging for 34 years. But I have had some experience with corrugate, as I call it. Interesting personal fact, other than being technically challenged, it only took me 15 minutes to get signed in today. Packaging comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And my first introduction to packaging, to be honest with everybody, was when I was 11 or 12 years old, and it was glass bottles. See, my father was a superintendent at a small brewery in Buffalo, New York, and he took my brother and I in to see what he was doing in there. And that's when I first saw and learned all about glass packaging and how if the bottle filler didn't line up properly, there was a lot of glass blown all over. But probably the most interesting thing that stuck with me to this day was when I went into the break room with my dad and saw on the side of the wall there 3 little taps that anybody that was eating their lunch could pour a cold one and have a little beer while he was at work. So I think that's long gone away, but that was my first introduction to packaging back when I was much younger. In terms of my corrugated packaging story, again, flexible packaging all my life, but several years ago, we were working with a number of large diaper manufacturers. I was supplying diaper bags for these manufacturers. And obviously, we used to make a lot of millions of diaper bags that were packed in corrugated boxes. And somebody had a great idea that if we just changed the compression strength on this corrugate, we could save a lot of money. So without much further ado, we decided that's a great idea. We won't change it too much. Well, a lot of diaper bags are palletized, or the boxes, the bags are palletized. And they're not only stacked too high in the truck as they go to the manufacturer, they're oftentimes stacked 2, sometimes 3 high at the manufacturer of the diapers. Well, I don't have to tell you what happened to those those cartons when they stacked them up. So I learned the hard way is you better pay attention to the details and don't change anything until it's thoroughly tested. So that's my corrugate story for today.
Awesome, Tim. Well, thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to getting your perspective on when you should and shouldn't use corrugated and when something like flexible packaging is a better fit. We have a question that's coming from the audience, and I want to see if any of the panelists are comfortable answering, wanting an explanation about duplex as well. All right. Well, something we can look at.
I'll hop in the chat and ask them to elaborate a little bit more, because I saw that come through.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So, Cory, question for you. One of the challenges with for people when they're buying packaging is figuring out how to come up with their specs. And are the boxes you're speccing optimized for your actual requirements, or are they being specced just because that's what the supplier has or wants you to do? So if you could talk a little bit about what people should do in regards to speccing and how they should best work with suppliers when trying to come up with specs for their packaging.
Yeah, this is a great question, and incredibly critical in this day and age. If your packaging partner isn't providing you with options and choices and reasoning behind each one, maybe they're not the right partner for you. And I think it's absolutely critical that you have that kind of a relationship where you trust them and they trust you, and you can reciprocate in a real partnership. To answer your question, you have to take care of your customer, and that is so critical. And you have to do the right thing for them. Of course, you also want to spec out what's available so that they don't become lying down. And that's something that's happened recently with this paper shortage and corrugated shortage. Is somebody maybe with an exotic paper mix, a paperboard combination for their corrugated, can't find it, and they panic, right? So we have been able to find alternative solutions for those paperboard combinations that work even better sometimes. So that's something really to pay attention to at this day and age. We've talked a lot about down gauging corrugated for sustainability and cost savings. But if you down gauge and then that paper is not available, you're in trouble. So you always need to have plan B and plan C available for your packaging. And I think a good partner will have those in line and ready for you.
And then one of the things that I talked about at the beginning is sustainable packaging seems to be coming up in every single packaging conversation.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for people as they embark on their corrugated journey in regards to sustainable packaging? Any tips or best practices or things to look out for?
Yeah, actually, Brian and I host a weekly call on Clubhouse about this on Fridays about how to ship. And it always comes back to sustainability. No matter what we call the room, people want to talk about sustainable packaging. And we could call it how to package a unicorn. And people would say, oh, let's talk about sustainability. So the answer is many. There's lots and lots of things that can be done. Obviously, right sizing your packaging, down gauging your corrugated. But the number one thing in sustainability is making sure that your product arrives safely, so you don't have to ship it again. And that's, I think, something that is often forgotten when people get too aggressive with the down gauging or lightweighting packaging. If you have to ship it again and you lose business, like Brian said, and I love this quote, I'm going to use it, Brian. He said, there's nothing sustainable about going out of business. And I thought that was really appropriate for this day and age and important to talk about.
Cory or Brian, you mentioned, making sure you minimize damage and returns. Have you seen any companies doing some innovative things with the return process? If they do get a package or something that maybe isn't damaged but does need to be returned, how can we make that process sustainable as well?
I can jump on this. I actually had a project recently, which was like the best example I've seen of this yet. So something that I like to recommend to companies where they see returns as a part of their business model. Obviously, D2C companies want to eliminate returns at all costs. But some of them, it comes with, their business model. It could be a clothing subscription service where you return 5 pieces of clothing a month. That's just an example. But something that we can do at our box plant at BCI, I'm sure Cory can as well at Landsberg, is we can apply a strip of double-sided tape, double-sided adhesive. And you apply a tear strip as well. So when the person opens their packaging, they're unboxing everything, it's as simple as to return, pull the tear strip, fold the box down, seal the box, and send it back. And the project that I just worked on, when you open the box, the front inside flap, all about it was instructions on how to return the packaging. So it was all printed right on there, pictures showing exactly how to do everything. They laid it all out beautifully. So that's something I see on the return side. That's a great way to be efficient. You don't need to use more boxes. It can go back in the same package it came in. So double-sided tape can be a nice innovation for returns.
Yeah, well said, Brian. Absolutely encourage people to reuse packaging as much as possible. Save your Amazon deliveries, save other boxes. If you have a small business, tell your friends to save their boxes for you. And that system has worked out really well. There's even a company now called Happy Returns that will consolidate shipments for you and ship them back to you without packaging. It's a really cool idea, and I'm excited to see how that works out.
The other example that I've seen is the use of QR codes. So printing a QR code directly on the packaging material, which is really convenient because any phone, you should be able to use your camera to scan. And you can provide very simple, easy instructions that walk you through the return process instead of the cumbersome printing, pages or materials that fall out of the box or having to go on a website or go on a chat or call somebody. So I think we're going to start seeing more people using QR codes to manage that return process as well. All right, Brian and Cory, thank you for that insight. Mark, I want to shift the conversation over to you and talk a little bit about pricing. I think almost everything I see now, it looks like prices are going up across the board, and I'm seeing this in the packaging space as well. So talk to us about price increases as it relates to corrugated, and are there shortages in the market and what's happening there?
Well, this is going to be a sensitive subject, especially since we have two representatives of people who sell packaging and produce packaging. So I'll try to do my best to just speak on it with sort of as a quote unquote layperson and as a buyer. Obviously, I think both Brian and Cory would have some thoughts. But I think to your point, commodity prices had been moving up steadily for about a year now, a little over a year. And that includes corrugated. I mean, we've seen 3 increases that have passed through the market since November. We had one in November, we had one in March, we had one in April. And I don't think it's a breaking piece of news to tell you that we're hearing about rumblings for more packaging increases. In fact, one of my business partners is one of the people that they call to take the quote unquote pulse of the market with respect to determining whether additional increases are warranted. So that's the summary. You're correct. It's not just corrugated. I mean, if you look at resin prices are skyrocketing. We've got shortages in PET. We've got skyrocketing prices due to supply interruptions, due to shipping interruptions. And I think largely, and again, this is just my sort of general cynical nature, but as a buyer, I think the simplest way I can describe it is because they can raise prices. We're in a market where the demand is very, very high. The demand is not abating. And to Cory's point earlier, the supply, particularly certain exotic paper weights and grades, are small. And anytime you've got a supply and demand imbalance, you're essentially, the market is inviting the suppliers to raise prices until they can no longer do that, until there are alternatives. So from a macroeconomic sense, it makes perfect sense that we have a period of increasing demand. We have limited supply. Prices are going to continue to go up. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of alternatives to corrugated. It's pretty much baked into the fabric of how we move goods throughout our supply chain. So I don't think we're in any immediate situation where prices are going to come tumbling down. Now, that said, historically, prices rise until they can't. And you're going to see this market turn on literally on a dime. One day, there's just going to be more supply and there's going to be less demand, and deals and prices will be moving accordingly. So I think it's just a nature of where we are. It's a nature of the beast where we are in the economic cycle of the world right now in the United States. And there's not a lot we can do. And I think you had a second part to that question. Hopefully I got the first part. Well, that's my 2 cents on why prices are where they are. You know, again, how we address corrugated in a time of high pricing. Obviously, our strategy has always been use less corrugated, and wherever possible, engineer waste out of the product. I mean, I got a box here the other day that just got delivered for us to study. Now, I do have a visual aid, Sarah. You know, I always have something nearby. But for those, for Cory and Brian, they might be able to see what's wrong with this box design just by these massive flaps, right? So somebody to make this box has to cut out a giant blank. And I looked at it and I said, that's just not the best way to make that box. So whoever's buying that box is using so much more paper than they need to, that it's bordering on wasteful. So in order to address the expensive paper, use less of it. So those are my thoughts with respect to price increases. The one other thing I will say, you asked about shortages. We have seen micro level shortages, intermittent shortages on certain grades. For example, that's what we call microflute. I believe that's an E-flute box. We have had situations where E-flute has been scarce. Some suppliers have had problems locating that. We've actually been getting a lot of calls from Central America. We have supply relationships and supply partners that we've worked with down there where they're short on linerboard right now. And we're looking around the country to find linerboard for them. So yeah, it's a short market. I think it's all going to work its way out. I think capacity is coming online. So I think we're just in a period where, it's going to look a lot different 6 months from now. But to Cory's point, if you're looking for some sort of exotic combination, the lead times might go up. It may be harder to find. And the last point I'll make on that is, over the last 5 years, the major integrateds have in many cases moved towards streamlining the number of linerboard options that they offer. And I'm not going to get into what we know about which integrated company, but we know one, they've taken it down to 5. And so therefore their mills are producing more of fewer linerboard weights as opposed to less of more linerboard weights. So if you're looking for something that's outside the statistically significant norm, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time finding it. So let's just hope that the supply and demand imbalance will rectify, and this will come back in line with a more equilibrium state.
And Mark, what are you seeing in regards to timelines?
Well, that's been the most challenging thing for us, and obviously I'd love to get Brian and Cory's take on this. But when we used to go to market and we used to bid out or quote out designs and boxes for clients, we could get things quoted in a week. We could get things quoted in 2 weeks, sometimes in days. We've had situations where we're literally 3 weeks out on just getting something quoted, and we're lead times on a new item, assuming there's no die cut or assuming it's not an ultra complex item. Lead times used to be, we could get something turned around in 3 to 4 weeks. In many cases, we're seeing 8 weeks, 9 weeks. In some cases, based on double walls and even triple walls, we're seeing 12, 14, 16-week lead times. So lead times are extending. Capacity is filling up. There's just not a lot of space. To take it one step further, and obviously I'd love to get confirmation from Brian and Cory, but due to the increasing demand of D2C packaging, die cutting, that step in the process, die cut capacity has been filling up. So what used to be fairly simple to get a die cut box made, we now have to work with what that particular supplier's capacity is to introduce that into their production scheduling. So die cut particularly has taken a big hit in terms of lead times for us. That's what we're seeing.
So Brian or Cory or Mark, Roger Buck has a question. He wants to know what's driving the supply chain issues. Is it a lack of pulp, lack of manufacturing capabilities?
Yes, all of the above, I think is the answer to that. Everything is in short supply. Raw materials, paper, pulp, capacity in factories, workers. Sometimes we run into a situation where we have all the raw materials, but then there's nobody showed up for that shift or at the production facility in North Carolina. It's just fascinating. Everybody says unprecedented, but it really is. It's a perfect storm of a whole bunch of issues. And I did want to speak to a previous question on the post. Someone asked if pizza boxes were recyclable, and WestRock just did a study that says pizza boxes are recyclable, even if they have cheese and grease on them, but do check with your local municipality to make sure that they will take them. But technically, yes, they are recyclable. It's just a matter of, will your local facility take them? So thank you.
All right, so Dana, I'm not sure if you or Brian want to take this one. We've got some more questions coming in from the audience. The question is, in terms of sustainability and circular economy, should consumers take extra responsibility towards returning product packages back to value chain to support this cause? Or it's more on the producer responsibility to create enough awareness for completing this value chain to make circular economy more effective?
Yeah, I think from on the bag side, they have that at, the retail where you can drop off bags, but I don't know if that's what they're getting at. But I don't know about dropping off or returning packages to, I don't know that they have the infrastructure right now to do that. I think a lot of times they're emptying those out and throwing it into either a compact or I can't think of the word. they're compacting it or baler and baling it and sending that out at the retail level. But I don't know about dropping off packages. I know they have that on the how to recycle for the bags, but not on the corrugate.
Brian or Cory or Mark, any thoughts on the question around the circular economy?
I see it taking a greater hold, not necessarily in the area of corrugated, but reusable packaging, primary packaging. And we're working on a couple projects. Obviously, I'm not at liberty to share because these are in early stage and very sensitive, but with metals and plastics that can be refilled, reused, and literally go to waste-free packaging. So there's a lot of really cool things going on right now. And I say that's a major trend over the next 2 or 3 years. That's my take, what I'm seeing.
Yes, I totally agree 100%. I think circular, returnable, reusable packaging is going to take up a larger piece of the pie moving forward. I don't know how far it will go. Will it take over completely? I don't think it can. But I think it will. I think Mark's right. It will take up more and more of the percentage of packaging. I just got some samples from a company called Laviri, returnable wine shippers. What a cool idea. They said they can use them 250 times at least. That's amazing. Yeah, right. Unfortunately, they send me the samples empty, which I was very.
Oh, I was going to say they send it to you 250 times. That would be a heck of a deal.
I was very disappointed, but I agree 100%. Circular packaging, like we said, Burger King is testing fast food packaging that's reusable. Tim Hortons up in Canada. We all know about loop packaging. It's just incredible. So yeah, thank you.
All right. So before I throw it over to Tim, I want to, Brian, give you a chance to address the question that came up earlier about duplex printing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure who posed that to us. I saw Roger shot a reminder to address. I actually hadn't heard duplex before, so I had to quick Google search it. I then quickly found, so duplex printing is top-bottom printing. That's printing 2 sides in 1 pass. Traditionally in the corrugated market space, if you wanted to get inside print, you would have to run your box through, print it on the inside, then flip it, run it through, print the outside, die cut it. We're now seeing innovations in the market where some people have equipment where they can print 2 sides in 1 pass. So top bottom, you can capture great efficiencies through top bottom printing. So if you have high volume, if you're printing 2 sides, look into a manufacturer that may have those capabilities. Another thing I wanted to throw out there, this isn't top bottom printing, duplex printing per se, but it's still 2-sided print. A lot what I do is top sheet on the inside, so a litho label on the inside of the box, and then direct print on the outside of the box. That allows us in our plant to still 1 pass it through because they apply that label right off the off-the-trod laminator. So when we get the sheets, they're already labeled. So then 1 pass through. So there's different ways to capture efficiencies. I would key in on duplex printing as something to become more and more prevalent as more people get this technology in their manufacturing facilities.
We've seen it. We've seen it with certain suppliers that they have that capability. We work with one in the Southeast, a regional supplier, and they are very cost effective. But I think to Brian's point, it's not a ubiquitous technology yet. It's still early in its adoption. So really, what you want to look for is companies, I mean, like BCI, that have efficiencies and know how to get these things through the machines in a quick and efficient manner. So it's not there yet, but eventually everyone's going to adopt it. But it's still a ways off.
All right, Brian, thank you for addressing that question. Tim, I want to pivot the conversation to you. Your background and career has really been spent in the flexible packaging space, as you mentioned. So do you see flexible packaging as a competitor to corrugate or a complement? And are there opportunities where they can work together in a manner that reduces the overall packaging footprint? And Tim, we can't hear you.
Sorry, how's that? They complement each other. I do not see us as competitors. All the packaging that we make today, the flexible side, whether it's roll stock or finished pouches or spouted pouches, goes in a corrugate box. Once it gets to the manufacturer who's going to put his product in, whether it be cannabis, peanuts, or a health food or a pet food, those go into another corrugate box to ship into distribution in the stores. If there was a way to use that box twice, the one that I start with, for the next step in the supply chain, that might reduce some of the packaging. But all the years I've been in, and I don't think I'm out of school when I say, as a society, we have over-engineered and over-packaged just about everything we do here in America and maybe the world. And a lot of people say, well, the manufacturer of the packaging should take care of the problem, or the municipality should take care of the problem, or the government should take care of or the person who's making the food that's putting in. It honestly, and again, I don't mean to be on a soapbox here, it's got to be a collective effort. All those parties together will make small incremental improvements in what we do. And at the end of the day, we'll all be better off for it. But everybody's trying, not everybody, a lot of people point to the other guy, says, oh, he should take care of the problem. No, it's this guy's problem. It's all of our problem. And together, I think we've got to figure out a way to, each of us, do less with what we have and produce less with what we're doing. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent there.
And Tim, do you have any samples to share with us? Do I see?
Oh, I've always got samples. We're doing a lot in the sustainable area now with compostable films. So I'll hold these up. A little company down in Miami. These are emerging brands that we've had the most luck with. People that are really committed to their brand, what they want to bring to market, and do it with a package that is truly either recyclable or, in this case, compostable films. The problem here in America today is we do not really have enough industrial composting facilities. There is a limited number of supplies. There are backyard household compostability. The films used in this have passed the European standards for both industrial compostability and the European standards for household compostability. The United States today does not have a household compostable standard. These films do pass the U.S. industrial compostable standard. So again, we're working with a lot of these emerging brands. This one, I'm not going to show you the front because I'm not supposed to show you who's. This one is another one. This is actually a metallized film that is compostable. And you can put things like cannabis in pouches like this, and they stay fresh. And the zipper on here is also a bio-based press to close zipper. So those are some of the things we're doing here. Recyclability obviously is a big thing, where we can use an all polyethylene structure versus a mixed laminate structure. And again, don't mean to talk too much about flexible, but it's, I know this is a corrugate session, so I'll shut up and move on.
All right, Tim, thanks for being with us. And I know we actually have our flexible show coming up, so looking forward to getting more insights from you and seeing more examples. We've got some more questions coming in from the audience, so wanted to see if one of you would like to address. Roger has another question. He wants to know what kind of costs are involved with the return of corrugated cartons for reuse. Since you can't bail them without damage, you're paying to ship it air. Even though it's the right thing to do, the costs are somewhat of an issue, I would assume. So anyone want to take that?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that. I think the key to that situation is flattening the corrugated and break it down so it's back in its original form, and then stack them up on a pallet, and then they become very resellable and reusable. What we're finding is there's a hot market right now for gently used corrugated, and that makes me really happy from a sustainability standpoint. But it's a lot easier and more likely to get reused if it is a stack of the same size of materials. So if your end user or customer can find a way to sort them all, they'll definitely get used up quickly. Thank you.
Brian, question for you around pricing. So Mark talked about some of the cost increases that the market's been seeing really across the board in almost anything we buy, but in particular in packaging. How can buyers generate savings on corrugated with all the price increases? What can people do to kind of keep their budgets in check?
Yeah, great question. So obviously the market's been hit hard, not just corrugated, really all raw materials, freight, everything is up. And there's absolutely some things that buyers should be doing to see if they can offset some of these increases that are happening. The first one that I just want to bring up might be the most obvious issue or solution. If space is not a concern, can you order more? Can you increase your volume to capture a better per piece price? If space isn't a major concern, that's something I would absolutely consider. Another one we've talked about throughout this would be down gauging or lightweighting your packaging. I wanted to touch quickly on what that could look like. So there's two things that I love to do with packaging. If somebody is ordering a C flute carton, I see a ton of that. It's just like the standard choice if you're taking a shipping box, C flute. If you can go from C flute, go down to B flute, you're now fitting maybe, I don't know, 20 to 30% more per pallet. So if you're ordering 2 pallets per more, that can be a great way to capture some extra cost savings without taking up more space. And then another thing would be, is your board in Mullen? Is it in 200 Mullen? Can you move it to ECT? ECT stands for Edge Crush Test. It's essentially just a more lightweight option to achieve the same function as what you get from a Mullen board. So if you're using Mullen board, it has a lot of virgin fiber. Can you transition to ECT with slightly more recycled content, a little more lightweight, but still performing very well? That's something to consider. And then a final one, I saw somebody post on LinkedIn lately. They said, hey, negotiate terms, talk with your supplier. Can you offer, 50% upfront and then 50% cash on delivery rather than having net 30, net 45 terms? Chances are they'll be more willing to work with you on your per piece price that way. And then another thing to think about, maybe if you're a larger buyer with more volume, can you get onto a contract with your manufacturer? If you can promise them dedicated volume for X amount of years, that's going to make it easier on them to work with you on your paper price. So those are a couple things that come to mind as to how you can combat some of these price increases we're seeing in the market right now. I'm sure Cory has some other ones he could add.
All right, thanks, Brian. So we've got some questions coming in now about paper. So Mark, I'll throw this over to you first and then see if Dana or anyone else has some thoughts also. So Greg wants to know, do you believe the current paper market is sustainable? And if yes, for how long until it calms down?
Well, it's interesting you're asking the consultant about the paper questions as opposed to the people who sell the paper. But let me do my best again on this one. I just sent Greg a note off screen. We're going to see massive budget overruns this year in the corporate world because they're not overpaying. The prices are gone up. It is what it is. And so it's going to start showing up at the end of these fiscal years, and it's going to be ugly. And at some point, it's a short-term problem because we have a spike in demand. The supply hasn't yet caught up. We're optimistic that by the third and fourth quarter, it'll start to level off and come back down. But I mean, put yourself in the position of a paper producer or a box maker. I mean, you want to sell more paper. It's never in your advantage to sell less. So we're optimistic that it'll calm down by the end of this year, but I don't know. I mean, the demand could continue to rise. I mean, we might have all kinds of unforeseen circumstances. But like I said earlier in a previous comment, that in the past, when things have tightened up, one day they're just going to turn around. And the same suppliers that were really holding you, I don't want to say hostage because that's an overstatement, but really, putting it to you in terms of price, now the buyer is going to remember this and have the chance to move. So I suspect what we're going to see is once in this particular situation, once prices normalize and once the supply stabilizes and once the converters and producers kind of get that into their gestalt, that the boxes and the paper is available, I think they're going to be more forthcoming than in the past with reductions and looking to go to longer term contracts and looking to lock in. That's my sense, but I don't think anybody really knows for certain, but I would say by the third and fourth quarter, we'd be optimistic that things will normalize.
Cory or Tim, any insights from you on the paper market, where it's going to go?
I think Mark's absolutely right. It will start to normalize at the end of the year, and or possibly early next year. We're seeing the same with wood, and those trend generally in the same direction. The wood market is out of control, as we all know. We've heard stories about. We just got our, I think, third price increase on wood pallets, and we've all tried to buy lumber or seen the memes and all the things at Home Depot and Lowe's, and I think paper will follow suit. And I hope we're all correct on this panel that early next year at the latest, things will start to get back to reality. But I don't think it will correct back to where it was. I think it will remain slightly above, but we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong on that.
All right, so we've got some more questions coming in. This one is, how much percentage of recycled kraft paper is used in corrugated fiberboard manufacturing process?
I'll jump on this one quickly. So it depends is the short answer. It depends. So you can run into having 100% recycled material used in your corrugated, or you can have, virgin fiber corrugated with, no recycled material. So all corrugated is recyclable, but the amount of recycled material in it comes down to, the supplier, the buyer. Some people demand 100% recycled material. Some people want virgin fiber. So it varies greatly is the short answer. It varies greatly. But you can lean on your supplier to dictate how much recycled content is in your paper if you have, specific desires in that respect.
All right, and then Brian, before I close us out, since we're almost at time, do you want to address Eduardo's comment about another alternative for saving money?
No, I just thought it was a phenomenal comment. He was mentioning downgrading your ECT if you can. Okay, you're already in ECT. You're shipping in 32 ECT. Can we ship in 26 ETC? A more lightweight option. It was just a phenomenal point and something that you should consider.
If I could, we actually use BCT. Our technical designers always look at what does the box actually require? What does it need to perform? And we don't design it based off of a specific ECT or MOA. Now, Brian is absolutely correct in his points, but also to Eduardo's point is we look at how many newtons that we use. Our designer is in the Netherlands. So we look at how many newtons of force what is the box required to withstand? And I think to the whole panelist point, and I think to where Eduardo was going, we typically find that boxes are overspecified as compared to what they really, really need. Why that's happening, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of explanations, but we're frequently found that there's opportunities to improve there. So good point, Eduardo. Thanks for bringing that up.
Awesome. So we are at time. I want to thank Dana, Tim, Mark, Brian, and Cory for sharing your insights about corrugated packaging with the audience today. If you found our discussion valuable, join us again on June 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, LinkedIn Live, same format each month. And we are going to talk about flexible packaging, which is Tim's area of expertise. So really looking forward to his insights and getting more samples and examples from him. Feel free to reach out to any of us on stage on LinkedIn. All of us are very involved in the packaging industry and post lots of comments and insights, and happy to engage in conversations offline. So with that, I want to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon and evening, and we will see you all on June 15th.